Hello, I'm Rob, aka Gold, and this is How2Wow, a new show dedicated to helping new and inexperienced players learn how to play World of Warcraft. In today's episode, I'm going to go over some of the basic things you need to know the first time you log in, and later we'll get into a little bit more detail about each of those things. The first thing you should know about World of Warcraft is that there are many servers you can play on. You'll want to play on the same server as your friends, so before you log in, make sure you know which server they're playing on, and then go from there. If you're not coming in with friends, or for some reason you want to play independently, the first time you log in, it will give you a server list. If you click on the population, it will change the way they're ordered. One of those is called New Players. So you'll want to get on a server that's dedicated specifically for new players. This will give you the best gaming experience because that server will have some of the best performance for you. The next thing you need to know is that there are two different factions you can play on. The first faction is called the Alliance, and the second is called the Horde. Mostly, the biggest thing this affects is which races you can play, but it's important to note that each faction is exclusive. If you're playing with the Alliance, you can't play with the Horde other than to fight them. And if you're playing with the Horde, you can only fight the Alliance. You can't trade with them or send them mail or group with them or anything like that. So if you're coming in with friends, again, choose the faction that they're on. Otherwise, just choose the faction that looks more interesting to you. The next thing you need to know is that there are three roles that World of Warcraft designates. These three roles are called tanking, healing, and DPS. DPS means damage dealing, basically damage per second. The first role is tanking, and these guys are pretty neat. It's their job to keep the attention of all of the mobs. Not everyone is a tank. You have to specifically choose to be a tank. Each of the classes that can perform the role tank can also be melee DPS. So you don't necessarily have to have the mob paying attention to you to get to punch it in the face. The next role is healing. Healers are really important because they heal the tank and they heal the group. Generally, if the group as a whole is taking damage, the healer will try to heal everybody, but their primary job is to always heal the tank and keep them alive because that keeps everybody alive a little bit longer. The last role is DPS, or damage dealing. There are two ways you can go about doing this. You can be ranged or you can be melee. Melee DPS is generally a little bit better at taking damage, so if you're playing by yourself, this might be a good option for you. Ranged DPS is generally a little bit better at staying alive and staying away from the mobs. So if you don't like being up close and personal with Mr. Evil, just keep your distance and play a ranged DPS class. Of all the classes, there are 10, and there are obviously 3 or 4 roles depending on how you look at it. So there's obviously combinations there. Only 4 classes can be tanks, and only 4 classes can be heals, but 6 classes can be ranged DPS, and 6 classes can be melee DPS. So you have a little bit more variety in abilities when you're talking about dealing damage. The classes that can be tanks are Death Knights, Druids, Warriors, and Paladins. And the classes that can be healers are Druids, Paladins, Priests, and Shamans. All the other classes can be DPS of one kind or another. But notice that Druids and Paladins can heal, deal damage, or tank. So they're a pretty versatile class for each of them. The other classes that can heal, namely Shamans and Priests, can range DPS also, and Shamans can melee DPS also. Once you've chosen your class, you want to choose a race. You'll notice that each race has a different set of special bonuses that you get for playing that race. I wouldn't worry about these if you're a new player because they're really not that game altering. Just choose the abilities that sound interesting to you. Past that, if you want to minimize or maximize, damage or damage reduction, however you want to look at it, there are several websites out there that talk about which combinations are the best. You can also go to the World of Warcraft forums at worldofwarcraft.com and check those. I would like to make a note that there are several classes that are much easier to play than others, namely Hunters and Death Knights. Hunters are really easy to play, but very difficult to master. So if you want a class that's really easy to get to the end game very quickly, Hunters are a good choice. Also, Hunters are pretty good at staying alive and avoiding damage because they have pets. So if you like having a pet, Hunters are a good choice for that. However, when you get to the end game, or maximum level content, these characters, namely Hunters and Death Knights, are both very difficult to master because they have so many abilities. Death Knights are a little bit harder in general because you can't play a Death Knight until you have at least one character at level 55 and have both the Burning Crusade expansion and the Wrath of the Lich King expansion. So you start out at level 55 and you don't have as many levels to practice playing that character. Hunters kind of drown in their abilities. They've got so many, and for each of the given specializations or specs, some of those abilities are just not worth using at all. So if you change specs, or if you decide you want to play a different way, it can be a little difficult. However, if you're just looking for an easy way to play and experience the game, Hunters are a good option. Other classes that are easy to play are Frost Mages and Warlocks of any specialization, because Frost Mages and Warlocks both also have pets, which can help reduce the damage you're taking and increase the damage you are doing. Past that, just pick a class that has interesting looking abilities and or just looks interesting to you in general. The next thing we're going to go over is armor. You'll notice when you click on a class that it lists what kinds of armor that class can wear. There are 4 kinds of armor: cloth, leather, mail, and plate. Cloth has the least armor, leather has the next, mail the next, and obviously plate has the highest kind of armor. You'll also notice that shields are listed there. The only classes that can use shields are shamans and warriors. And paladins. What's I going to say? If you can wear plate, you can wear any kind of armor, except shields are kind of a special thing. If you're wearing mail, you can wear mail, leather, or cloth, and if you can wear leather, you can obviously wear cloth also, but cloth wearers can only wear cloth. No matter what kind of armor you have available to you, you want to wear the armor that is the highest rank. Another way of saying that is, if you're playing a paladin, you always want to be wearing plate of some kind. At higher levels, this will give you a bonus, but at lower levels, it's just really important to have the extra armor to keep you alive, because your class is designed to have that extra armor on all the time. The next thing we're going to cover is, you will notice, especially at lower levels, that there are only 4 different kinds of stats that you'll have to deal with. These are called primary stats. There are other kinds of stats, but they're not as important. These are strength, agility, intellect, and stamina. Each point of strength gives you 1 attack power, which increases the damage you do. Each point of agility gives you 1 attack power. Each point of intellect gives you 1 spell power, and each stamina gives you a certain amount of health. You might wonder why strength and agility both give you attack power. This is because strength is designed for classes that wear heavy armor, like plate, and agility is built for melee classes that wear a lighter armor, like mail or leather. Intellect is good for any caster that uses spells or heals, because it gives them 1 spell power, which increases the damage they do and the healing they do. Stamina is a stat that only warriors need to worry about. Only tanks need to worry about, I mean. You never want to go out of your way to gem or enchant for stamina, because this won't make you survive better. Having a better health pool is nice, but it's better to have things like mitigation, block, parry, dodge. We'll get into those in another episode. Basically, what you need to know is which class you want to play, and then you need to look up which primary stat they have. This is on the character creation screen. Remember that stat, because it will affect you throughout the entire game. Other than that, have fun, choose a class that you think you like, and don't be afraid to start over. If you don't like the class you're playing, choose something else. Don't be afraid to experiment. And don't think that healing and tanking are only for veteran players. You can learn to play these specs too, it just takes a little bit more energy to learn. Okay, in the next episode, I'm going to go into the specifics of what you need to do as each of the roles. See you then.